Hey guys, today we're in the book of 1 Kings chapter 12. Today we just get a little bit more detail on really what we learned about yesterday in chapter 11. We see from the very first verse who really has the ultimate power. It says Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all of Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. Now remember, Rehoboam is the son of Solomon, who's going to be the king of the southern kingdom of Judah and Benjamin, the two tribes, right? Jeroboam will be the king that is of the 10 northern tribes. But from the very beginning, notice what happens. Rehoboam has to go to Shechem. This is in the kind of central part of the northern region of Israel. So he has to go up to the 10 tribes to even be made king. So we can already see before there's even a king, they hold the power, right? And so we see that from the very beginning. And they sent and they called him, and Jeroboam in the assembly of Israel came and said to Israel, your father made our yoke heavy. Notice what happens. Jeroboam has come back from Egypt because he heard Rehoboam is coming north to become king. He wants to be a part of that. And so they go to the elders, and the elders say, listen, your dad, man, he killed us. He enslaved us. He taxed us to death. Right? And so he built a great kingdom. Yes, we will acknowledge that, but we paid for that a lot. So we want a king who is not going to be like Solomon. You need to ease up on us. You need to let us kind of get our feet back under ourselves. And so, And so Rehoboam says, hey, come back and ask me 3 days and I'll let you know what's going to happen. So Rehoboam does the right thing. He goes to his father, Solomon's elders. He goes to the old men and says, hey, what should I do? And they tell him something that is good and wise. Be a servant to the people today, and they will be your servants forever. They said, hey, don't be like your dad. Love them, support them. Go easy on them now, and they will love you forever. But notice verse 8, it says he abandoned what they said. He didn't like that idea. And then he goes to his friends, right, the young guys that he grew up with, and said, hey, what should I say? And they basically say, hey, you need to tell them that your pinky is stronger and wider than your father's thigh. My pinky muscle is greater than my father's thigh, which is the strongest muscle, right? And he said, you tell them you're going to be a bigger and badder king. And Saul and Rehoboam, he liked this, right? Oh yeah, I can be bigger. I can be this. He said that I will be, my father raised you with whips. I will raise you with scorpions. My father beat you into submission. I will kill you into submission. Now you can imagine any person would hear this and say, that's bad. That's not how you're going to win a kingdom. But he didn't hear this, nor did his friends hear this. And the key, so everybody comes back to him in the 3 days, and basically he tells them this, and the people were mad. They are angry. He said, I'm going to add to your yoke. And so the king didn't listen to them, and what happened? Israel split. The 10 kingdoms, the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom said, absolutely not. We will not be under this. We're not voting for this. We do not want you as king. You can be king of your southern tribe, of your kingdom, right? So of Judah and of Benjamin, the southern part, the southern two tribes, just as the Lord had prophesied. And so Israel had been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. And what happened? Jeroboam returned and they made him king over Israel. Exactly what we talked about yesterday. Jeroboam is the king of the north. Rehoboam is the king of the south. 10 tribes, 2 tribes, right? And when Rehoboam came to Jerusalem, he assembled the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, and there was 180,000 soldiers. And he said, we're going to go to war. We're going to beat the 10 tribes. We're going to beat them into submission. And this tells you the thinking process of Rehoboam is not even there. It's all about sin. It's all about pride. It's all about power. And basically, though he has 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, the smallest tribe, so he has the least amount of people. He has 180,000 soldiers where the 10 tribes would have had millions. And he said, I'm going to go against them and I'm going to beat them into submission. And notice the Lord had to stop them. The Lord comes and says, no, you're not. This is because they would have literally got obliterated, right? And so he says, you shall not go up and fight against your relatives, the people of Israel. And so Israel listened. It doesn't say that Rehoboam listened, but Israel listened, and they went back home. And then Jeroboam, the king of the north, he's doing some thinking, right? He's king. What am I going to do? How am I going to build my kingdom? And as he's thinking this, he makes Shechem the capital of the northern tribe, right? Jerusalem was the capital of all of Israel. Well, Jerusalem's in the south. So now he has to build a new capital, and that capital is in Shechem, which is about the center of the northern 10 tribes, okay? Then he got to thinking, man, this is the capital, but people still have to go to the temple. People will still have to go to Jerusalem to go to the temple, to go to the feast, to do these things. And he says, man, if they go back, they're going to want to stay there. They're going to see all that Jerusalem has to offer. They're going to see the beauty of the temple and the palace and all these things. And man, they're really going to want that. And maybe they'll move south. They won't want me to be king for very long. So Rehoboam got to thinking, and so what he does is he starts to build some other temples. Verse 28 tells us that he builds 2 golden calves. But notice what he says in verse 28, behold your gods, O Israel. He builds 2 golden calves, and he tells the 10 northern tribes, behold your gods, Israel. We've seen this exact statement before. In Exodus chapter 32, as Moses is on Mount Sinai conversing with the Lord, right, getting the 10 commandments, Aaron goes and he makes a cow, and after he makes a golden cow, he says, behold your God, O Israel. This is the same sin, the same thing that Aaron did. We know how the Lord is going to feel about this. It's in Exodus. All of Israel knows this, but they don't care. Behold your gods, O Israel. He makes 2 golden calves, and he puts one in the north, which is in Dan, which is in the very, very north part of Israel. And he puts one in the south, in Bethel. Right? So it's still in the 10 northern tribes. He just puts one in the north and the south. So no matter where you're at in Israel, you don't have to go to Jerusalem. You don't have to go into Judah. You can stay within the northern kingdom and worship God. But it's not Yahweh they're worshiping these golden calves. And so one in Dan, one in Bethel. And so you'll see these for the rest of the Old Testament, Dan and Bethel. These are places that are terrible. These are places that are idolistic worship, pagan worship. But this is what the king Rehoboam builds for them so he could keep Israel from not going to Judah, to Jerusalem to worship the Lord. And then it talks about that he made temples on high places. So not only in Dan and in Bethel, but he made temples all over on mountain peaks so that anybody could worship wherever they want. So they could worship 2 gods. They could worship any gods they wanted. And then it says they went and made priests of any people, not of Levites, but anybody could be a priest. And so now they have fake priests at fake temples, at fake for fake gods, right? You just see the idea that Rehoboam is causing, right? Totally turning back on God. And if that's not bad enough, then we see in verse 32, it says that Jeroboam appointed a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, the feast that, like the feast that was in Judah. So there's a feast that's going on in Judah. Well, why would there be a feast in Judah? It's because God commanded certain feasts on certain days. This is the Feast of Sukkot, or what will be the Feast of the Tabernacles. This is a feast that happens 5 days after the Day of Atonement, right? Remember, the Day of Atonement, the high priest goes in, pours out the blood, all of the sins of Israel is wiped away for that year. And then after that, they have a sombrance remembrance. And then 5 days later, they have the Feast of the Tabernacles, or Sukkot, to remember the wandering of the desert and how the Lord provided. And for 7 days, it's the biggest festival going on in Israel. And so during this, right, all of Israel, even the 10 tribes would want to go to that. That's like the party of all parties that's happening in Jerusalem. And so King Rehoboam didn't want them going south again, so he creates his own festival at the exact same time, right? So it's like Sukkot, like something that God wanted them to do, but it's something completely different. And notice what it says in the last verse of the chapter. And it says that on the 15th day of the 8th month, in the month he had devised in his own heart. And this just tells us where Rehoboam at. He is creating this religious experience of just what seems good and what feels right. He's doing nothing what the Lord says. He's doing nothing what the law says. He's not following any part of what God said. It's all what he feels is right and what Israel feels is right. So you have Rehoboam in the north, who has a lot of people, has 10 tribes, but is setting up to be totally against God. And then you have Jeroboam in the south, who has Jerusalem, who has the temple, who will start to do things that are godly. This will not always be the case. The north is not always bad and the south is not always good, but you can start to see this huge dichotomy, and this dichotomy will eventually be what destroys all of Israel, the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, as we get further into the Old Testament. Hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 13. God bless.